Very good.
Good afternoon to our attendees joining us today for this Jersey Clicks educational webinar in partnership with the New Jersey State Library and our friends over at Data Axle. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get started in just a couple of moments here, but I am going to go ahead and drop a couple of links into the chat. So first of all, if you made it to this program today, great. You know where to find our programs upcoming for our Jersey Clicks databases, but I'm going to go ahead and put the link to our database training registration links in the chat right now. We have a number coming up. Our next one is coming up on February 22nd. That's Get to Know the New EBSCO host. And you'll see that we have additional programs scheduled in March, April, May, and June. And I'm also going to put into the chat a link to our, oh, I lost the chat. There we go. A link to a survey where you can provide feedback on today's program that we collect here at the New Jersey State Library. So I'm Michael Mazikin. I am the project specialist for shared services at the New Jersey State Library, and I manage the suite of Jersey Clicks databases. And today we are joined by Bill Carlson from Data Axle. He is a customer success manager. Bill, how long have you been with Data Axle?
Since 2008. Coming up
Wonderful.
on 16 years.
So you are hearing from the expert today, and he is going to provide an overview of the reference solutions software that every resident in New Jersey has access to through Jersey Clicks. Bill, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to drop out my camera. I'm going to turn things over to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Michael. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Some of you I may have met in person, others perhaps not. I am certainly anxious to share certainly some insights about the database. If you've attended any of my presentations, I like to go into the nitty-gritty, right? Because it's where all those details are at, right? That are so important. In fact, I just ended a conversation with a group that you may all be familiar with called SCORE. This was a SCORE group in the Chicago area, and I'm doing a presentation for them later this evening, and just kind of running through some of those things that we're going to cover. And I always find it interesting when I hear, because we take phone calls from patrons Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 Central Standard Time. And it's always interesting when I hear from these library patrons that they've just recently learned about the database being available at their library. And once you start to impart some of the things that they could, in essence, do with the database, they're just amazed and they're very happy. So it's always been my goal to make certain that libraries and library staff specifically have a very good understanding of how they can take advantage of the database and help patrons, of course, learn how to use it. Whether they're looking to make, we know that a lot of patrons are using the database to identify sales leads, right? They want to, whether those are sales leads with other businesses and or consumers, we certainly know that that's oftentimes top of mind. We also know that a lot of times it might be about being able to do some research on a community, understanding the types of businesses that are in a community based on whatever geography selections. We give many geography selections that can be used. So it's being able to understand some of those approaches. And I know that I heard from a gentleman just before I logged in to do today's presentation. I heard from a gentleman that is a job seeker, and he was wanting some information on business records. He was out of Commerce City, California, and looking for some specific types of businesses that he might do some outreach to try and win a job. So it all depends on what those patrons' needs might be. So I'm going to go ahead and shut off my camera because I do have a tendency to talk with my hands. Feel free to submit any questions you might have in chat. And Michael, if you would kind of keep an eye on that chat and let me know if there's something that comes up that folks would appreciate a response to, that's certainly something we can do. I would much rather have you ask me those questions based on where I'm at in the database than needing to perhaps back up to it. So I'm real okay with questions coming in at any time. First thing, I want to just cover a few housekeeping items. Know that we do offer these webinars. I'll open this page real quick. Oh, I better share my screen here. Oh, I'm still sharing, Michael. Correct? You can see my screen all right?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. All of a sudden I lost my border and I'm like, oh, did I stop sharing? So we do offer these webinars throughout the month. So you can certainly point patrons towards any of these webinars and let them know that they're available. So we have one for, getting started using the database, kind of the 101 of using the database. Some of the more technical kinds of approaches you might take when applying tools and some of those data filters is offered. We have one specifically for entrepreneurship, so that's a great one as well. And then we have a couple of more, one specifically for librarians. And I do know that, or I'm assuming, I'm making some assumptions here that patrons may well attend this as well. And in doing so, I think they might believe that I might be giving you some kind of top secret information about the database. Well, that there would be nothing further from the truth there. I'm just making certain that librarians understand maybe some of the things that they could troubleshoot when accessing or when patrons are trying to access the database. And then the last one, and we just rolled this one out, oh gosh, I want to say probably 5 months ago, because we do sell email addresses, and I've seen an increase, and part of that might be because we're doing so many more webinars, but I do see an increase in the number of emails that come in asking that question, how do I purchase email addresses? So it just made good sense to offer that as a webinar. And this is just a 30-minute presentation. So certainly feel free to direct anyone there. The other thing I'd like to point out would be the Learning Center. So there are some great materials here. If you would like that for your library, you can either print them off yourself. If you wanted to have us send you bookmarks, we're certainly happy to do that as well. You'll notice we have these various bookmarks. We have this trifold brochure. I really happen to like this one because it would walk the patron through how they would go through your library's website in order to get to our link, and then using their library card information, getting access to the database. Not to mention also the modules that would be available. So that can be a great resource. We have these various flyers as well. And then for someone that might need a bit more technical assistance or would appreciate kind of the ABCs of how to do a search, if they're using the US Business Database, I'd point them right here. Because that's what that particular module or that particular overview is going to cover. And then we do make available a couple of different data dictionaries. So one for business, one for household data. If they have a question about a particular data element and they maybe just don't understand what that might represent, they could refer to the appropriate data dictionary to probably answer their question there. And then, of course, our contact information is everywhere in here. So it's certainly very okay for you to call us if you needed some assistance, or to direct patrons to us. Maybe the question they have is really detailed and you're like, I'd rather you reach out to those folks that do this day in and day out. We're happy to take those calls. Also want to point out the personal accounts. This is a great resource, especially for those patrons who don't necessarily need to download information. We do know that obviously they might download that because they want to create this sales leads and they want to do a mailer. We know that that all happens. But for those folks who may not necessarily need to download a lot of data at once, but they would like to come back to their search periodically, they can register and then they can log in and they can save their search that they might do through these various modules. The only module, and this it happens to be the jobs and internships module. Our vendor for that was Indeed.com, and they pulled the plug unexpectedly on us, and so we're actually in negotiations with a couple of other vendors of that kind of employment data to see if we can't backfill and use them versus the Indeed. So when you select this, you simply get this service update about it not being available. This would be the only module, at least that's how it worked with Indeed. I don't know that may change going forward with another vendor, but this was the only module that you could not save in a personal account. All these other 9 you could certainly save and come back to them at any time. And the beauty of being able to do that is if someone saved some specific business records that they searched, we'll save the actual filters that they used to build that search initially, and then we'll reproduce it real quickly, and that way they'll get the latest and greatest information as it is about those particular filters. So can be a great one. This is being updated 52 times a year. So we call these businesses annually, and we're doing that week in and week out, right? We're calling those businesses annually. The trigger that causes that call to happen is when the phone books come into us. We still get phone books just like we did when we started in 1972. We get those phone books, we bump that up against our database. Anything that's brand new gets added, anything that's a duplicate gets rejected, and then we begin this calling campaign. So we're calling those businesses annually to verify information like, of course, the name, the address. Since they answered the phone, we know that works. Number of employees, who might be that owner or manager of that business. What other lines of business might they be in besides that primary one that we may know about? So we're capturing that, updating that, pushing these out live every Thursday into Friday morning. As we go through that process, you can imagine we don't always reach those businesses on our first attempt of calling them, right? So the system is set up to change the day of week and time of day, and another follow-up phone call is then made. We'll make a dozen attempts actually throughout the course of 24 months, so 2 years, to try and keep a record verified. If we haven't learned that it's closed, but yet we can't raise anyone and the phone hasn't been shut off, we'll keep that business record, but we'll put it in the unverified universe. So I'll show you how you can get to that data as well. The U.S. historical business information, which is being fed from the U.S. business, this is being updated at the beginning of every new month. So all those businesses that we verified in January of this year, as soon as that tick happened and we turned the month into February, we go through that update and pull those records in here because now they're also historical, right? And our historical records go back to 1997. That's when we started keeping track of that data. Before that, it was like we'd get to the end of the calendar year and all that stuff had fallen on the cutting room floor and we just swept it up and threw it away. We didn't retain that until 1997. So great tool to use for those businesses that are looking at site selection, for example. Want to know if that area around that business is stable over time. You could do that in the historical business database. So it's really a fabulous tool for those entrepreneurs that are looking to open a business, or maybe there's a business that's considering a move to a new location, etc. Canadian information, it gets call verified just like the US business database. We're pushing that information out live monthly. So that it'll be the third Thursday of each and every month that we're pushing that out. The jobs and internships, when it was functional, it was being updated nightly. We would get a feed from Indeed.com, and then we would match the company record with that job opening or that internship. So I still promote, when I'm talking to job seekers, I still promote that they can use the US business database. They're simply going to, when they go to Monster or CareerLink or Indeed, one of those posting sites, they can jot down those companies that they're interested in learning more about and then search them out in the business database. US new businesses. These are, think of this entire module as our staging area. If you've ever been into a big warehouse, they have a staging area where everything happens from, right? And then they go put it in the appropriate rack, etc. That's what happens in this universe as well. So we get those new business filings from Secretary of State's offices. We also get them from postal processing. So when mail starts to go to that new business address, and or utility hookups, we're getting this information weekly. It's not nearly as robust as what you see when you're in the US business database. But that doesn't make it, that does not make it invaluable, that it wouldn't be valuable for those businesses to know about, because maybe I have a desire to get in front of new businesses because maybe I sell some type of insurance, or maybe I sell some type of product that businesses would want to use as cleaning products, etc. So certainly great insight. I can get that. And where we have phone numbers, those will be posted in here. So if they wanted to do some outreach, they could. This is updated weekly. They'll remain in here for 1 year. As soon as we get them verified, which is typically 30 to 45 days, we will give them a full record in the US business database. Our US healthcare, this is a popular one. I have a nephew in Denver, Colorado. He has a transcription service. So he works with physician's office, dentist's office, and what he'll use the database for is to identify those businesses, those dentists or those doctor's offices that have an office manager, and then he'll reach out to that office manager about his service. So he uses this particular module all the time. Now, we also have this doctor's information or this dentist's information about their business in the US business database. What's going to be contained in here would be, where did this doctor go to school? What year did they graduate? What's their medical specialty? How many patients do they see on average per week? Do they accept Medicare, Medicaid? Are they accepting new patients, etc.? We're capturing that, updating that information monthly. US standard white pages, just like what you would see with the phone books, except we have added both the block group and census tract information for those residents, as well as, and that's what allows us to also include home income or home value if they're actually living in a family dwelling. So we're capturing that, updating this universe monthly. US Consumer Lifestyles Database. This gets a lot of use. So we're capturing this information from a multitude of different sources. Surveys. You know, if you've ever done any air travel or maybe even train travel, in the Midwest, we don't tend to jump on trains very often around here. Nor do we have any cruise ships, darn it. But airlines, hotels, car rentals, always sending out surveys after you've completed your trip or your stay. How did we do? So we're capturing it from that kind of information. Credit card processors. also from voter rolls, memberships people have joined. I was not in the consumer lifestyles database when I first moved into Omaha, but probably within 3 months, I was identified as a dog lover under the lifestyles category because I started buying my dog's dog food through Petco because he had developed an allergy. And the vet said, if you get him an all meat product or an all fish or poultry, he'll be fine. He doesn't need all those grains, what have you. So I ended up finding something that he could palate at Petco, and I became a Petco Pals member. That's how I was identified because of my frequency at Petco buying him his dog food. So, great resource to use. I helped a lady down in St. Louis. She owns a business, it's a home based business. She makes some very elaborate, we'll call it costume jewelry, and although it's not your average costume jewelry in that her husband is a retired silversmith and really does some great work for his wife for these pieces that they create. So she was looking to identify consumers that were interested in various kinds of accessory items. She saw that and that fit the bill for her. So can be used for lots of different reasons regarding either at-home businesses or even a retail business. Maybe I'm opening a fitness facility and I'd like to know about those people who are into health, diet, and fitness. I'll show you how that works. The Canadian information, just like with the standard white pages, updated monthly. And then last but not least would be the US movers and new movers and homeowners. This is a great module. And in fact, I'm going to go into this first and I'll just pick a community in New Jersey. What I like about that, and I know that certain libraries have certainly taken advantage of this, and they'll look at it maybe quarterly, maybe every 6 months, or even leading up to September, new library card member sign up month. Because you can learn about those people who are truly new to your community. So let me launch that first. We'll always come to this quick search page, no matter what module I go in. I'm going to go right over to advanced search. And just like on all the other modules, you'll see this additional filters. This is the back door into advanced search. So when you select either of them, it will then take you to the advanced search tab. Here are the various filters I could start to employ. I'm going to keep this really simple here. We're going to do relocation details. We'll say move distance and time frame. So when you look at move distance, and it's going to be up to the end user on this, perhaps you don't want to know about people who've simply moved across town, but rather you might want to know about those people who are truly new to your community. So you can start this out at any mileage. I'll just I'll say 25 miles. And let's go out 3,003. Seems like a good number. Notice it always defaults to the last 6 months, but it could be as recent as last week because that's how frequently we're updating this. And we're getting all of this data through the USPS National Change of Address. We have a full license with them. Or it could be as far out as a year ago. So let's do just the last 3 months. And I'll just grab a city here. We'll say Edison. I just had a light bulb go off. No, I'm kidding. We'll go Edison and go. And there's my Edison, New Jersey. So 25 miles out, all the way out to that 3,003 within the last 3 months. I'm just going to update my count real quick. So I have 82 folks that have moved in, but I don't know if they're homeowners, if they're renters. So I can apply this home ownership filter if I would like to use that to identify confirmed homeowners or probable homeowners, renters. Now, there could actually be a fourth one here, but we didn't think that anyone would want to select by that, and it's just not available, right? We just don't have enough information available to make a call whether they're a confirmed or probable homeowner versus a renter. So if I wanted to know of this 82, how many of them are renters? Maybe I sell real estate and I'd like to know about this group. I have 11 households that are renters that I would have access to their information, everything but phone numbers. So we're going to have that physical address. Phone numbers aren't required in that national change of address. So no, you could be that specific. Notice it does have housing type, estimated home value could be used, estimated age. So I could use that because we're getting that through the Census Bureau related to that neighborhood, to that area. We have some mortgage options here that could be sought. It just depends on how you want to do that. I'm going to leave home ownership off and let's just go to this group of 82, especially for the library's sake. You wouldn't care about the fact if they were renters or not, perhaps. Now, I do have this home ownership on this far right-hand column, as you see, and I can change this. If I wanted to change this up to that move distance, I'll have all that information inside the records, but quickly I can ascertain here, oh, I've got a few, here's a couple that are quite a ways out. Here's a couple of more. So you can see a lot of them have moved from relatively close by, but a few of these have come in from a ways out. And I have, in this case, 4 pages. So if I needed to get to that next page, it's select that right-hand toggle and advance. In fact, last year at the LibLearnX conference in New Orleans, I was doing a training for library staff in New Orleans, and they're looking at this page that popped up of these new movers, new homeowners, and all of a sudden they suggested that I should look at Ross's, for example, Ross's record. And I'm like, how do you all know Ross? Well, Ross was the new library director. So that's what they wanted to look at that record. So we're capturing this information, and USPS would tell you they believe about 70% of the movers fill out that move information. So, of course, we're going to be minus 30% here. We just know that. But 70% is much better than 60 or 50. So we'll take this. This is a great way to be able to introduce these folks that are brand new to a community. So if you're a librarian and would like to do this, bingo, what you could do is instead of just using the city state, you could also choose to include street address. And you can do this from a formatted standpoint. If the pre and post directional information is a must in your community, and I know it varies, or you could just do a free form. I kind of like this because it's pretty simple, right? 123 Main Street. If that were the library's address, you could do that and then do a radius around that location to see these new people that have come into the area. Just depends on how you want to do that. So can be a great resource if you'd like to use this or point that towards business owners that happen to work with consumers. A lot of times they want to know about people that are new to their community that they could do some outreach with. Any questions yet there, Michael?
I am not seeing any questions in
Okay.
the chat right now.
All right. Thank you. Feel free to ask away. I'm going to go from the US new movers, new homeowners, and let's jump right into the business database. This is that one that we know gets the most use. I'll launch it. Again, it's always going to come to this quick search page. Great for finding a single company or an executive. perhaps looking at all businesses within a given city or state. Let's do this real quick. I'll just do Newark. No, it's a little larger community. Let's do Newark. And we'll go with New Jersey. I better come down here. There you are. So whenever I view results from this quick search universe, the default is set up only to show those verified records that we have. I can pull in those unverifieds or those closed if I wanted to, but this is just those that are verified. So when I select view results, I have 12,000 of those verified businesses across Newark. I can chart this information, and what this will do is it will break these businesses down by the type of business that they're in. So here's my top 7 types of businesses. And when I say types, I'm referring to this SIC code. That's the Standard Industrial Classification Code. It's a coding system that, as far as Uncle Sam is concerned, it's been retired in place of the NAICS codes. But we've made these so much more granular than when Uncle Sam was managing this, that we've kept them alive, right? There are so many of our customers that continue to use it just like this. Now, if they're a government agency, chances are they're using the NAICS codes. But we obviously continue to promote the use of these SIC codes. So in the top spot, physicians and surgeons, and that's usually the way it is in most communities of any size, simply because they're all 1099 guys and gals. In this case, it's followed by restaurants, then churches, dentists. Notice we do have ATM machines as well. So I like to point that out because there is also a way that we can choose to have the system exclude ATMs, or for that matter, any kind of business. Then it's followed by attorneys, nurse practitioners. So that's my top 7. We do have this full report also below. Notice this is 68 pages in length. It always gives you that primary SIC code along with the description and the number of records that apply. So if somebody wanted to sell, maybe they had some kind of product they wanted to sell to salons, they could click on that number of 160 and it will take them right to that group. So it just depends on what they would ultimately need to do. I can also change this up. It's one thing to know the types of businesses. I could do it against the zip codes in the area. So if there are more than, which there are more than a few zip codes there, I could break it down that way. I could break it down by sales volumes. So when we talk about small businesses kind of being that economic engine behind most communities, well, look at here. Here are these businesses that do less than $500,000, definitely smaller businesses, but that makes up almost 36% of those businesses. And you could say that this is really considered a small business, and perhaps even this. You start to add all that up and you can understand quickly. I get it now when they talk about small businesses kind of being that driver for our economic engine. And then, of course, I could switch it up to employment sizes, and we'll always give it to you in these ranges. When you are in the records or downloading the records, you could choose to get the actual numbers. All of this can be made part of a PowerPoint presentation or just simply print it off. Maybe they want to include it. When I'm working with SCORE, they're wanting this information to be included in business plans. Maybe these 11,000 businesses represent those businesses I intend on trying to do business with. Bingo. So quite easy to employ this charts. I'm going to revise the search, and I want to share this with you as well. So I'll take out New Jersey, and we're actually going to go down just south of you to Maryland. and I'm going to put in Baltimore. So I like to share this. Maybe you've heard me share this story before. We do take those phone calls day in and day out from library patrons, and I happened to take a phone call from a lady that was looking for a particular business, and she said she had done so from the quick search page. She was looking for this business called Baltimore Licks, Licks. And she said, when I went to view results, it didn't produce any. So I thought, well, I'll do it real quick myself. And I did. And I got the same 0 records found that she saw. And I said, did you by chance look under advanced search? And she said, no, I just stopped here. I said, okay, let's go to advanced search. So I walked her along with me as we went to the advanced search screen. And I said, let's do this. Let's put company name here, and we'll include unverifieds and closed businesses, and we'll look for Baltimore Licks that way. We tried it, still no records. So the next most logical step, I simply asked her, what kind of business is it? What type of business is it that you're looking for? This Baltimore Licks, what does it do? What is their business? She told me it was an ice cream parlor. So I looked up ice cream parlors. Not Ozarks. No. And search for that. So all SIC codes, or all businesses have a corresponding SIC code. There's the SIC code for all ice cream parlors. I clicked on it, added it to the selected field, and then it was a matter of simply selecting Baltimore. And I could have included the unverifieds, but I just went with the verifieds when we first did this. And go. So here's my Baltimore, Maryland. Now, as you can see, as it relates to ice cream parlors, I have 53 of those around the city. And I did ask her, are you sure it's not in the county, but not in the city of Baltimore? She goes, oh, no, it's in Baltimore. Well, sure enough, but it's not Baltimore Licks. It's actually Bmore Licks. So at this point in time, she's like, oh, that could be it. And then, of course, we ended up opening up their website, and we saw this most colorful building with the great artistry that's on here. And immediately I wanted an ice cream cone. But you see what happened here. She may have simply seen this Baltimore's best homemade ice cream and thought that was the name, but it's actually Bmore Licks. So there is no Boolean search within the database. I get that question a lot. There's no Boolean search. So at least we were able to find that information for her so that she could go about using that however she needed to use it. I didn't specifically go into what she was looking for with that record, but I did point out she could peruse through that entire record and get some additional insights. So that's one way to find information if they say that business name has failed. And I'm going to revise this search. We're going to stick to the New Jersey area. So few of these, obviously company name or legal name, most people don't use those because they want more detail than just one company, but you could use that if you just wanted one company or maybe just a few companies under name. Executive, we give you lots of different ways that you can look at that executive information. Certainly know that a lot of times people are looking for certain types of executives. One of the more popular ones tends to be, as you might imagine, human resources. So if that were a title that they really wanted to see in a record, they could drive in both or one, doesn't matter, right? They're going to get one for sure, might get both. Maybe they need owners. They can certainly, drive in just those businesses that have an owner present. That tends to be a popular one. And we do have executive gender and ethnicity here. And then we have recently also added under ownership female, veteran, and minority-owned businesses, we're getting this data from the PPP loans that people have done and secured those loans. So if that were a search that someone wanted to do, could certainly do so. Keyword, like I did with the ice cream parlors, tends to be a pretty popular way to search because frankly, people don't know SIC codes, right? They may not have an SIC code. They just simply know it as this kind of business. Major industry group, this is just the SIC codes. And initially, when we introduced this, it's just as Uncle Sam had put these together. So agriculture, forestry, and fishing were all part of this group. Of course, mining was large enough that it was in and of itself. Construction, perhaps 2 to 3 codes here. If you wanted to understand the definitions for each of those, which most people do, you click on that plus symbol, it breaks it down by those definitions. If somebody were interested in general contractors, they could select that. And then that was as granular, 4 digits, as Uncle Sam went. We added 2 more to make it this much more granular. So if that kind of approach to getting to, maybe somebody needs information about water damage restoration, they could certainly drive in just those businesses that's what they do. And if they need to make certain that that's their primary line of business, you can simply scroll right down here and tell the system that I need this to be the type of work that they do day in and day out. And we'll give you that information. And at that point, it's a matter of what geography do you want. I helped a niece find this information down in Dallas a couple of years ago. They had a freeze that lasted several days, and she had water pipe issues. So her mother directed her to Uncle Bill. So it just depends. You can use that keyword search, or you can use that major industry group. Either one will produce the kinds of results. Geography speaks for itself. I will show you this map tool. Phone speaks for itself. The business size as it relates to that number of employees, about 72% of the businesses will give us an exact number. Those that choose not to, for whatever reason, what we'll do is based on the SIC code that they're under, we'll look at their peers in that geography where they're at, and we'll assign a range. So just know that if you see an exact number, we got that in our phone call, you see a range, they did not provide that. Sales volume, get this question a lot. Bill, how do you get these private companies to divulge their sales volumes? We don't. Simply put, we don't. So we're putting this we have an algorithm that we put together to produce this sales volume. And we're using certain data elements in order to do that. So we're looking at how old the business is, how long have they been in business, number of employees, that does go into that model, the line or lines of business that they might be in. Obviously, if they do more different types of business, chances are they're a little bigger company, right? We also look at the physical location because we need to make allowances for taxes. And then we also get data from the Bureau of Labor and overlay that against that so that we can provide that sales volume. So if it's private, always modeled. If it's public, we're getting that sales volume from their 10K. You can also look for businesses, and this would be found under ownership. Headquarters and branch, we actually have a couple of other selections under here, and one of them gets used a lot, and that's for finding those businesses that are truly single location businesses. So a great way to be able to look at that. And if you wanted home-based businesses, you can say yay or nay to those. Of course, we've got those government offices, a number of financial selections, business expenditures, just like with sales volumes. If it's private, that's modeled information. We have some special selects. Rarely every once in a while I'll hear from somebody, and like I say, I've been with the company nearly 16 years now, and sometimes I'll hear from a patron and they'll say, well, Bill, under special selects, there used to be a reference to being able to get email addresses. Well, that's never been there. Not in the 16 years that I've used this database. And this is the fourth generation since I started in '08. So that's never been contained here. Although I think what sometimes happen is I do promote and encourage people, if you're looking to do a small little email campaign, you could always pull up those businesses that do have a website, and then you could go into those websites and see if you can find any email addresses that you might be able to include in a small little email campaign. Could certainly do that. The only thing it costs them at that point in time is time, right? Because they're not going to have to purchase that. So the other thing I always point out to folks that want to do email blasts, especially if they intend to do it themselves, they need to be compliant with the CAN-SPAM rules and regulations. So the other thing that they need to know is a lot of times third-party vendors like there's I want to say Chipmunk. No, it's not Chipmunk. I just lost the name of that email. Constant Contact is another one. Monkey Chimp. They will not allow users of their platform to upload third-party email addresses and include that in an email blast. But a lot of times people may not see that in that fine print. So I want them to understand that if they go out and search and find a bunch of email addresses, but their provider for that email platform doesn't allow them to use third party, they will have spent a lot of time for perhaps nothing. Also like to point out years in the database. For those folks that need to know about newer businesses, maybe 1 year is too new, but they would like them at least say 2 to 6 years old. I could drive in those kinds of results either based on certain types of businesses or maybe just businesses in general in a particular geography. So this does tend to get a lot of use, and I like it better than using year established because this is not 100% fill rate, but we know how long we've had them. So that can be a great resource. Professionals, all are one. We saw when we looked at Edison that there were a lot of physicians, a lot of dentists in the area. If somebody's putting together a list and they intend on doing a mailer, and that mailer is going to include doctors' offices or attorneys, they may not want to reach out to every attorney in an office, but rather just one primary. They can change that default from all to one. They'll produce fewer records and they'll spend less money with that mail campaign because they won't be mailing out as many. Not to mention, I can also, this is a new filter that we've added in terms of mailing addresses. So if they would like to only be able to send that mail piece out to those businesses that do pick up their mail, there are those that don't, then they could certainly add that to the mix. Again, they'll produce fewer records, but it's more likely that their mail piece is going to reach the intended audience. So a couple of options there. And then, of course, I mentioned excluding. In fact, there's those ATMs and we do have kiosks. So if somebody did not want those kinds of records included, they could choose to omit that and they won't see those then. And why didn't that come up for me? I thought uh-oh, it's not liking me. It should have popped a little bit. Well, it's still thinking. Then I could make that my driver or make that one of my selections and simply not be including those. And that could be any kind of business. Maybe somebody wants to look at all businesses, however, they don't want bars. So I could choose to omit by a keyword and get rid of those bars. Did you see that green arrow? That's telling me I'm open now. So I could select that. There's my ATMs, kiosks. So know that you can employ, I would say on the low end, most patrons are probably using 2 to 3 of these filters combined together. On the high end, it might be as many as 4 to 6, but really not much more than that in most cases. You might have some of those outliers, but in most cases, that would be the tops. So let's do this. Any questions, Michael?
No, at this time, there are no questions, and I think that some people might not have been able to access the chat before. It is functional now, so if you do want to add questions into the chat, please feel free to do so.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes. I'm going to do a simple search. I like to use restaurants simply because they provide enough results for me that I can show you all these other tools that I have. So I'll search for all restaurants and let's do, give me, what is the, Michael, what is the county there that Trenton is in?
We're in Mercer County.
Mercer County. I don't know that I've ever looked at Mercer County. So we're going to do Mercer. Let's go New Jersey here. And there's Mercer. And I could be adding as many counties. I know that some of you might live near other states. So if you wanted to include that other state and maybe a county in that neighboring state, you could do that as well. You get to be the author in terms of how this looks. So I have across all of Mercer County, I have 875 restaurants. Now, just like I showed you when we were in the major industry group, I can tell the system that I need this to be their primary line of business. So let's see what happens to that number. So it dropped to 624. So we've taken out businesses like bowling alleys that have a restaurant in them, etc. I'm going to view those results. I can always chart this again. And when I choose to chart it from this perspective, the first thing it does is it gives me the cities in Mercer County because I've already told it that's where I'm looking, and I'm looking at this SIC code. So it gives me those top 7 cities, and then of course that full report. I could switch it up to the zip codes, certainly the sales volumes, etc. I also have, and those folks with SCORE or small business development centers, maybe your community is fortunate enough to have a business incubator. They love this tool. This is our heat map. It's a density map. And it takes that information and it overlays it against that geography. So here's Mercer County. I'm not certain exactly where the line falls, but I'm assuming it's kind of down this way. Oh, and there's Pennsylvania, so it's going to be that way. Where it's red in these areas, it means I simply have a lot of restaurants in those areas. Where it's yellow, fewer, green, less. And of course, where there are any gaps or holes, there just aren't any restaurants in those areas. So it doesn't look like I have anything there at Mount Rose. I can always, again, print this off. I can make it part of a PowerPoint. I have this top 50 results. If there were 50, there aren't. But I do have those top results based on those zip codes. And I could get to this group of records if I wanted to get to that group. So it just depends. You can even alter this map and it notes that right here. So if you wanted to change that zoom and you get to the point where it's less than 300 records, this is what you'll see. So I'm going to click one more time. We'll do it, I'm sure. Then it overlays that information. It gives you this information on the side here. Michael, have you been to any of these restaurants? Why? I'm going to have to make my way down towards Mercer. So know that you can certainly access it this way as well with that legend on that left-hand side. I can also download these records if I'd like, and it will always say how many downloads can be done at a time. So that's 100. So that'd be 4 pages at a time. I can grab all 4 pages by using this toggle to advance to the next page, which I can continue to do for 4 pages. Once I'm there, it's a matter of selecting my download. First question I have to answer, what do I want to do as far as the file format? Most people use comma delimited simply because it is going to allow them to put that into mailing labels. So that's why it gets used so much. Summary is going to include the name of the business, their address, phone number. It'll also include that manager or owner's name, along with title, number of employees, sales volumes. Then it's a matter, do I want to email these records to myself? Maybe they're working with a partner and they want to send them to them as well. Could certainly do that. Or do they want to be the keeper of those downloads? If so, they would select that download option and it gets done pretty quickly. They would simply then take this summary sheet, which didn't seem to want to open for me. There it goes. So then I can take this summary sheet and I can go about saving that and maybe sending that to my partner that I'm working with, or maybe I'm going to add more records. If that's the case, I always encourage them to open up their own version of Excel and do a copy and paste. That way they can keep adding to it. Then they simply come back. It'll always leave them on that 4th page. They will want to get rid of these check marks so they don't produce the same records again. They can simply revise search. We didn't forget how they built that. They can view their results. They're brought back to page 1. Then they would just type in page 5 here in order to get to that next page. And I am seeing, Michael, that you all are underserved in Mercer County. So I'm going to advance here and see if I can find a... Nope, not there either. We'll go with Dairy Queen. So notice I have this structure regarding their corporate tree. The single arrow up is going to take you to one record, and that would be one record only. It'll either be the subsidiary, and if there weren't a subsidiary, it will show you the ultimate parent. This will give you their entire organizational structure. So a lot of times businesses will need to have this kind of insight so that they can get a sense of the hierarchy as it relates to those businesses. So let's open that up real quick. I can't remember if I've done Dairy Queen in the past. Oh, that's right, I have, because they happen to be owned by this little company out of Omaha, Nebraska called Berkshire Hathaway. So they have some 277 subsidiaries and some 12,000 branches related to all those companies that they own. If I'd like to, I've got a legend that runs across the top here, so I can quickly identify PC means it's a public company. I could open up this Berkshire record. I could look at this American Dairy Queen Corp., which is out of Minneapolis. No wonder their Dairy Queen's out of there, because that's where it's so cold. So ice cream is easily stored there. No, that's not why. I can also collapse or close this subsidiary, and then I'll see some of those other companies that are also part of Berkshire Hathaway. So if this kind of access to information is important, which it is in a lot of cases, then I can get to that kind of data. I can print that off. I can download that. I can also get to that if I open up that record itself. I'll be given that Dairy Queen information, there's that address, phone number, website, social links. There's that corporate information as well. That industry profile. In this case, a little soft serve ice cream. I do have Google Maps embedded because we have the latitude and longitude in the background. So I have that. 26 employees at this location. The last time they were updated was August of 22. So this is one of those records that's gone into that 24-month rule. So we're going to continue to try and reach them through August of this year. We may find that this Burger King, I was going to say Burger King, Dairy Queen is no longer open, right? That might be what we find out. Or we may just get it verified again. They've been in our database for a few minutes anyway. Had that management directory, company news. We get this through Bing and it's loaded on the fly. So the last time this was updated was on the 5th. And it might be about some of their competition, some other newsworthy kinds of things about the industry. We won't have stock data on a branch, only on that parent record. Of course, those business expenditures followed by some historical, including historical records. So, I was just going to mention that. I kind of remember when this happened, when it went from Dairy Queen to DQ Grill and Chill. I vaguely remember when that occurred. So we will give you access to these historical records, which will track address changes as well. So if I wanted this 2013 record, I could click on that business name for 2013, and it will open up that record. We do give you this slide, and this is active. So if I wanted to go further back in time, I could do so, or I could go obviously forwards in time. Just depends. And of course, I have 3 other sections. So UCC filings. These are filings that are done if a business is taking out a loan and they've put up something as collateral. That would be captured there. None in this case. I know that from some of the presentations that I've done and lenders being in the audience, they like to use this kind of intel because it helps them to decide if they may want to do some outreach and discuss options for loans. Along with nearby businesses, again, because we have that latitude and longitude, and then, of course, some of those competitors. And if I wanted to get into one of these competitors' grill records, I could do that. So if I wanted to get into this Chili's, I could click on that, or I could click on those nearby businesses. So I can always move around in those as well. In fact, with job seekers, I often point out that you may want to look at those competitors to see if they have any kind of job openings. We know that the Indeed isn't functioning right now, but that can be a great way, once that is again something we have available, that could be a great way to for folks to be able to find out if there might be some other job openings in that area. Let me go back to the top of the record. This is a question I get a lot. So Bill, am I able to change or alter or update something about a record? Maybe I'm the business owner. Maybe I'm the manager. Maybe you know this particular location and you know that they actually have 30 employees. Well, what we would do is you would submit this through this data feedback button. And as it notes here, it's going to go off to these researchers. And based on the boxes that you may have checked or that free form message that you may have provided us, let's say it is that number of employees and it's 30. You submit this to us, and we'll then go about trying to call verify that information with that business about that number of employees. So any business can be updated. I was at a training, I want to say it was in Westfield, and there was a business owner that was in attendance, and we brought up their record. They did not include, when we did that call verification, they did not include their name, so they wanted to add that. They did not include the number of employees, and at that time it would have been one. He had recently hired someone else, so that number needed to now be two, right? But he didn't include anything there, so we had just the range sitting there. So we updated that, and then he received a phone call in regards to that just a few hours later that afternoon. So great way to be able to do that as well. Any questions on those records or how I produce that or any of these other tools? Okay, let's do this. I want to show you this map-based search tool, but I'm going to do it in a different module. So let's go over here and I'll build this very similarly to what I did. I mentioned the woman who makes this costume jewelry that's more than costume, and then sells it. So she sells it a couple of different ways. She does have her own website, so she wanted to be able to do some of that direct marketing to consumers that might be interested in her products. And what in that message to them when she sent that mail piece out, it was going to direct them to her website, right? Where they could really get a sense of the products that she has to offer. She also wanted to use the US Business Database to identify boutiques in her city, and specifically boutiques in her city that had a web presence, because she was going to try and meet with them about letting her sell some of her work in those boutique locations. So a couple of different ways that she was looking to market her business. As it related to the consumers, and I'll just open that up, what we did in her case was went right to advanced search. Obviously, the information that she was first looking for was under lifestyles, and it happened to be in this very first category of apparel, fashion, and beauty. But as you can see, we have a variety of different categories that are made available. So just depends on what someone might need. I helped a gentleman understand how to use the dog lovers under pets in order to identify consumers that he might reach out to about his kennel business along with his obedience training. So again, depending on what might be needed. She was interested in this section. And there is a scoring mechanism. We don't just randomly decide who's going to be shown and who's not going to be shown as a record. It's all about this scoring system. So it's 0 through 9. If they're a 0, they simply have no interest in that particular category. So they're not going to show if I select accessories unless they're higher than this 0. But if they're a 9, they're definitely going to show because they're really interested in this. We'll only show records for people who score a 6 through 9. So they have to be active. They have to be active in this particular category. And by the way, I have the ability, if I wanted to do this, let's say that I'm interested in accessories, and let's say that I'm also interested in stylish men's apparel and stylish women's apparel. Now, I do have the ability to link these three categories together. And that can be done right here under show more options. So when I select that as an option, it's going to take those records that match any of those interests. So any of these three. But now I'm going to say, they need to all match. So the person that's also interested in stylish women's apparel must also be interested in stylish men's apparel and accessories. So let's do this real quick. I'm going to put it back. We're going to open up, we'll do the city selection. Let's do, I mentioned Westfield. We'll do Westfield. And I'll say go. And I know there's a gazillion of them. I have relatives in Westfield, Iowa, but we want this one in New Jersey. So the other thing that I'm going to alter would be contacts per household. I just want one name, one address. So I'll change it to that. Now, how many people, when I'm looking at these three categories, am I going to come up with in Westfield that are into one of these three categories? I have a total of 6,566. Now, if I link those three together, let's see what happens to my total. So it dropped it down to 353 because I told the system they need to all be into these three sections, these three categories. So now that I've done that, if that were my audience group, bingo, I'm done. Maybe that's too tight. Maybe that's too narrow. I want more than that, but I don't want the 6,000. So there's a couple of different things that I could do. I could choose to, do I want to take off one of these categories? Let's take off the men's just for the heck of it and see what might happen to this number. Jumped right back up, right? So I could tweak it like that in order to make that a little smaller universe. And that's kind of what we did for her. So I'm going to go into this. There's the entire area as it would relate to Westfield. Let me show you the information that's contained, and then we'll talk about a couple of these other tools and how we use that. So when I'm looking at Michael's record here, I've got that name and address information. Everything appears that he's married, been in this home for about 23 years. There's that census information that we're getting. And then that's what allows us to then overlay this additional information related to that estimated home income and home value. And we adjust that based on when that was last done. And then, of course, there are those lifestyle interests. The only reason that came in is because of stylish women's apparel. We know that was one of the categories we wanted, along with accessories. Now, would this one would not have come up if we left the stylish men's apparel, because it's men's apparel, but not stylish men's apparel. So this record would not have been produced if I'd left all three of those connected. Great way to be able, so that's the kind of data we're going to be able to get at. Now, what we did in her case was she wanted to understand one thing in particular, and we found that under charts. No, she's not interested in home value. She's interested in home income, because what she wasn't going to do was try and market to people who wouldn't be able to afford her products. So she was going to use these various ranges to make some decisions about the groups that she would most likely market to. So let's do this. Let's use, even though 100,000 isn't on these first six, it could be in this other category. So I'm going to say, let's go with 100,000 all the way up to this 199. That's going to be my sweet spot. So I'm going to go back to my results. Before I use this, I'm going to revise that, and I'm going to add in this estimated home income. and I'm going to come right down here. I'm going to grab that 100 to right there. So now what do I have left in terms of numbers? 671. Certainly much more manageable number if I'm going to send out a mailer. But now let's take a look at this and let's see where they're at. So you can see from the map, they're kind of evenly spread out across the community of Westfield. And I'm going to assume that this is the city limits here for Westfield. So you can see there are a few red spots, some yellow ones, a lot of green. Now, just from the looks of it, though, there's some great density right here. So what I would do is I would simply use this insight, and I'm going to have to do this I'm just going to have to take a visual snapshot of this. So I'll say South Avenue West is going to be, and there's North Avenue. I guess it's northeast and south there. They must connect right there. So I'm going to say that South Avenue and North Avenue East is going to be part of my area. And I'm going to come all the way down here to Terminal Avenue. And I'm just going to draw this area on my map. So I have to go back to the map-based search tool in order to do this. So let's go back to my results. I'm going to revise them. I'm going to kick the city out. I'm going to open up my map. I don't need to add any other filters. I have my zoom to. Here's my map of the US. I haven't told it where I'm going yet. We'll go to Westfield again. And go. So there's my Westfield area. Almost lost it. It's right there. Let me pull that up a little bit because this was that. In fact, I'm going to drill in just a little bit. Yep, that was the area I wanted right there because I could see that South Avenue and that Northeast Avenue. There's that Terminal Avenue. So I'm going to use my draw a shape. I also have a true radius. I have some predetermined boundaries. It starts off as large as the state, but if I wanted to overlay the zip codes, for example, if this was what I wanted, I could click in whatever zip codes I would like, and I could get the totals as it relates to that. So I've got 670 in this zip, 769 and 665 there. So that could be what I need. If that were it, you'd have to come up here to the right-hand corner and say done, and you can see I'm ready to give you those results. You would just click on done and then view those results, and you'd get that 2,104. But in this case, I'm going to go back to draw a shape and select that. So I'm going to start here on this Avenue South, and you can see where that round, it's not lined up perfectly with my mouse, but I'm going to come down this way. I'm going to click to start, and then I'm going to come right down here towards this Terminal Ave. And I want to stop right there. So it's another click. Then I'm going to come over this way, click, and then I'm going to come right up here to this northeast. So that's going to be the area I want to focus on. So I have 595 results that match my criteria that are in that shape. I'll simply say done, view my results. And then I can start downloading this. And what she was going to do, she was going to download this information, bump it up against her current list of customers, take out any duplicates, and then end up with a total that she was going to mail to. So it really is that user-friendly. Questions? Would you like to see any additional information? These are kind of the three main ones. Remember, I said that they all search the same way. It's just a matter of what information might need to be obtained, right? I have spoken to real estate agents that use the US standard white pages, and what they try and do is find those homes. And you could do this in the consumer lifestyles as well, but I know they also do this. They'll look at homes based on certain value levels, and they'll send out mailers to those homes in whatever geography that might be, to see if folks in that area might be interested in selling their home. You know, before we saw this downturn within the economy, there were countless communities across the United States that just didn't have inventory. So real estate agents had to come up with another way by which to get a hold of inventory, and that was to reach out to people to see if they were perhaps even considering selling their home. Well, if there are no other questions, we can certainly conclude here. Again, if you would like any assistance, you can always, in fact, I should be able, I think, yes, I can. I'm going to type in my email address and send that out to everyone. If you would like to reach out to me specifically, you would like some assistance, you want to do something with your staff, I am happy to do presentations. I do travel and do some presentations as well live, so we could always do that as well. There's my information.
And I want
Certainly feel free to reach out to me if you would like to do that.
And I wanted to reiterate from the New Jersey State Library, my thanks for Bill joining us here today from Data Axle, and to all of our participants today in this webinar. I've dropped that link again in the chat to our evaluation survey. So if you do have a moment, I'd appreciate it if you would click on that and fill it out. But in the meantime, thank you again, Bill. Always a pleasure working with you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I see Michael was able to identify that company as MailChimp. I think I said Mail Monkey. So yeah, MailChimp, that's it. Thank you. I appreciate everyone. Have a great day.
Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for coming by to this webinar today. Take care.
Goodbye.